I'm joined here in Washington by Duke Energy Chairman and CEO Jim Rogers. The company is one of the biggest power producers in the nation. Jim Rogers has been one of the most outspoken advocates within the industry, the utility industry, for action from government on the issue of climate change and carbon. Thanks very much for joining us here on Bloomberg, as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What is your sense with the president's move with regard to this offshore, opening up these areas for oil and gas exploration? How is that going to move the ball on climate change? Are you any more optimistic there's a deal here?
I think President Obama has stepped out, not just with his comments on offshore drilling, but also his comments in the State of the Union with respect to the role of nuclear and carbon capture and sequestration for coal. He is clearly signaling that we need to develop an energy and environmental policy that reflects a centrist approach to our future. And I believe it will accelerate and increase the probability that we will get legislation, the steps that he is taking.
Legislation this year. There have been some who suggest there's no chance given the healthcare fight, the poisoning of the atmosphere here in Washington. Do you think something can happen on climate this year?
Unfortunately, I think the conventional wisdom, as you say, is probably not. And that's, quite frankly, unfortunate, because that means we start all over next year in the House, and we have to go through the process yet again. But maybe it's appropriate to take time, lay the groundwork. And what I would love to see is the administration come forward with a bill and try to sell the bill to both the House and the Senate, rather than having them come up with it. Although I'm very impressed with the work that Senators Kerry, Lieberman, and Graham are doing in trying to come up with a bipartisan solution.
We might see that after this Easter recess. Could be one of the first things that come up. Some are suggesting this is not going to be a cap-and-trade approach. It's going to differ somewhat, that cap-and-trade is dead. What made cap-and-trade such a dirty word?
I think that a couple different things. One is the failure to really understand how it works and how it smooths out the transition to a low-carbon world. The second thing is one of the things they will do is have more of a sectorial approach where they phase it in, where utilities maybe go first, and then the...
Can you live with that?
I can live with that. And then the refining industry goes second. And maybe you do cap and trade for the utility industry, but do something different for the oil and refining industry, and then leave the industrial sector further out. The point is we need to get going, because if we have a clear roadmap on carbon, it allows us to go to work, modernizing and decarbonizing our fleet, which will stimulate the economy, create jobs, greater energy security, and clean up the air. And that, to me, is the way we need to think about this new energy and environmental legislation.
Let me ask you just about your business right now. We're coming out of recession. We saw a decreased demand for electricity around the country. There's a lot of talk of perhaps consolidation within your industry. Do you see that happening in the short term?
I think over time, there will be further consolidation. If you look back over the last several decades, there's been significant consolidation, and it's come in several waves. I think we're at the beginning of another wave of consolidation as you start to look at ways to mitigate price increases that are coming in our sector. We just come out of a 50-year period where the real price of electricity has been flat. Now, as we modernize our generation fleet, our distribution operations, we start to invest in energy efficiency. That combination will drive the real price of electricity up, and that is going to put pressure on regulators and companies, and that is the ingredients for consolidation.
Real quick, just a couple of seconds left. Healthcare, I got to ask you about. A lot of companies saying they're going to have a hit on their bottom line as a result. Is Duke Energy?
We're going to have a hit on the bottom line.
Can you give us a sense how big?
No, I'm not ready to talk about the amount. We're finalizing it now, but I think this has been a surprise for most of corporate America, and I suspect there are going to be more hits on our bottom line and a cost to the economy from this health care legislation.
Jim Rogers, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Bloomberg.
Thank you.